Hello and welcome to this virtual DynamicsCon event for the community by the community. My name is Ludwig Reinhard, and today I'm going to talk about electronic reporting. So we will cover a range of different examples that show you how you can use electronic reporting in your environment, basically as a weapon for everything where you find that Dynamics has some shortcomings. So it's really a kind of rebellion weapon that you can use against any shortcoming in the Dynamics empire. So let's get started with the slides and the agenda that I have prepared. So basically, I will show you three different use cases that you face in many companies. So the first use case that we will talk about is about importing bank statements. So bank statements is an issue that every company faces. And when it comes to importing them, reconciling them, and getting the data right, that's something that you see often. And I will show you how you can manage things with electronic reporting. The second use case that I have for you is uploading WBS, so the work breakdown structure of a project. And I will show you how you can integrate that with the Power Platform. So you will see a bit Dynamics, you will see Power Platform, and you will see electronic reporting. And finally, we will close with creating invoice documents. But it's not just invoice documents, it's more like invoice attachments and lists that customers often request from us and that are not available in the standard application. But I will show you how you can implement them with electronic reporting. Okay, so then let's get started with our first part, with our first weapon, the import of bank statements in general ledger journals. And what I have prepared in the following are three parts, basically. So first of all, I will explain you what is the problem, what is the issue. Then I will show you and demonstrate you what you can do to fix this problem. And then we will jump over to a demo in the system before I go over the different slides again that give you some additional hints and tips on what you can do to implement this in your environment. So let's get started with the slides first. And on the first slide, I illustrated you the basic process when it comes to importing bank statements. So on the left-hand side, you can see a bank statement file, symbol, and we import that into our cash and bank management module. In this module, we have an advanced bank reconciliation functionality available, and there we can reconcile transactions. So that's perfect. Huh? But there are some problems with that. And let's go over the next couple of slides. So first of all, when it comes to vendor payments that are highlighted in yellow here, then everything is fine because your company has vendor payments, you record them, and you can directly reconcile them once you get the information from the bank. Now, when it comes to customer payments that are highlighted in green here, things are different. Why is that? Because customer payments are made by external parties. So you have no impact or influence on when these payments are made. And once you get your bank statement, you have to import the statement, identify the customer payments, and then reconcile it with your bank statement. So it's actually an additional step that is required. And on the next slide, you can see that the same applies for fees, transfers, charges, and any other transaction that is not originating from Dynamics. So to overcome all these issues and this additional work that is necessary to bring up this transaction inside Dynamics, I prepared the following slide for you that highlights you the concept that I want to demonstrate in the following. So on the left-hand side, we start again with the bank statement, but different from what you might be used from standard Dynamics, we import these statements into general ledger journals. And then in these journals, we do a reconciliation of the vendor payments, customer payments, and other transactions at once. So there's no additional step. There's no moving around in the system necessary. You can do all from within a single form. Okay, so after this short introduction, let us then move to my system where I can demonstrate you the different steps and the processes that are related to these transactions. Okay, so I will now move to my demo environment and let's share my screen here. Okay, so I'm now logged into one of the Microsoft demo companies, USMF in this case. And what I'm going to show you in the following is how we configure and execute this import process. So to import bank statements, the first thing that you have to do is you have to navigate to the electronic reporting workspace. This can be found here by opening this workspace, and then in the report configurations, I prepared an import file basically that consists of 3 parts. So the first part that says demo is the import model. If you have a quick look at this, this basically defines the elements that you import. So these are all the lines that you can find in a general ledger journal. So that's the easy part. You just define the names. The model mapping is also an easy part. So if we have a look at the designer, then you can see in the middle the general ledger model that I used. And it consists of the header and the lines that we just saw. And then on the right-hand side, I have the general ledger journal entity. So this is our destination where we want to import the data into. So that's all a very basic mapping that is necessary between these 2 elements. Now, the more difficult part comes with the import statement file. And this statement file basically defines the structure of your bank statement. And what I have prepared here is for my home country in Germany, we have basically bank statements that are separated by a minus symbol. So that's this line here. And inside of each bank statement, we can identify the different transaction lines by this number 61. So whenever we see 61, we know, okay, there's a new bank statement line identified. But let us see how the mapping actually occurs. So here in the middle, I have my bank statement file, all the elements. And what I'm doing then is I applied some calculations. So I applied some basic formulas, if then else or where or filter formulas that help me to get the data out of my bank statement. So if we have a look at this first element, that gives us the date, the transaction date. Let me make that smaller. Then we can see that this transaction date is then mapped to our general journal lines here, where we say, okay, this is the trans date. The next fields just give you the description, and the other fields, all of that, what you need to fill such a journal. Okay, so that's it for the setup. And now let's see how this works. So to import a bank statement file, what you have to do using this model is basically you have to ask your people coming in there, clicking this button, and then you say run. When you say run, you select the statement file. So let me select this from my folder. I choose this one, open it, I hit OK. And then after some seconds, things are finished. And what happened is that we will have a new bank statement file imported. So let me switch to the other session to show you what happened. And here in my second dynamic session, we open General Ledger, the General Ledger journals, and then you can see that we have here a bank statement imported with all of the lines that were included in the bank statement. So I have identified customer transaction, I have identified the amounts. If we scroll to the right, we can see the bank account and other information that was included in this bank statement file. So that's great. But if you really consider this process, then it's a bit risky, because I basically ask people to go into electronic reporting workspace, then to open this form and select the bank statement file. That's not something that is very usable in practice. So what you can do instead of that is you can enhance this configuration a bit. And what I did is I combined this with a SharePoint. So to demonstrate you this, I created a copy of my initial bank statement import, which is basically the same configuration. The only difference is in the model mapping, I don't run the report directly by selecting a file, but you can see this from the screen here, that a SharePoint is the source of my file. So let me quickly jump to my SharePoint side. This is now here my team side. And on this side, I have a SharePoint document library configured that says MT940, which is the bank statement format that we use in my home country. And here I have a folder where I can upload just my bank statement files. So let's just select the first two and click open here. And what happens now is these two bank statement files, they are placed in this folder, and then there's a batch process running that checks for new files. Once it identifies these files, it grabs them and imports them into our general ledger journal section. And in my case, the import occurs approximately every minute. So if we go and refresh the bank statements here, so let me move that a bit and refresh that one, then we see that a new bank statement is just imported here. And after another minute, the next one will be imported and so on. Yeah? So this gives us a nice overview and import functionality for the different bank statement files. So, and you can easily see that we have different transactions. So we have customer transactions, we have bridging transactions, and you even get an information how the transaction was identified. So for example, the customer was identified by name, by the bank account number, or something else. So that's all well and good, but if you really consider the bank statement reconciliation process, that's only part of the story. And that is because you also have to settle the transaction. So if we have a look at my last bank statement file, then I can illustrate you this easily. Here in the bank statement lines, I have a customer payment. So for $155 in my example. And what users need to do is they have to go to functions, settle transaction, and then mark the individual transactions that they have basically included in the bank statement file. But that's something that is very manual and that is not really user-friendly. So there are basically two options how you can overcome this issue. The first option is you can adjust and modify the electronic reporting model. So basically you can put in additional if-then-else formulas to identify, okay, what has the customer paid? And the information to which you apply this is if-then-else formulas, they are included in the transaction text here. So you can search for the invoice term, for invoice numbers, for other information the customer gave you. But after discussing this problem with a colleague, we decided to do something different. And what we did differently was we decided to make a small custom adjustment. So we have here a settle SEPA button implemented that is basically just going over the statement lines and give you some information what invoices have been found and what invoices have been marked. So after this, you press this button, And once we go back into the lines, then you can see in the settled transactions that this process identified the second invoice here. It did not identify the first one, probably because there was a typing error or something. Yeah. Then you can still mark them manually here. But this is a way how you can easily get these transactions settled. Okay, after this short demo, let me go back to my PowerPoint slides where I will show you how to set up these things and what to look out for to make this working. Okay, so after this short demonstration, let's go over some notes that help you to set up and configure your system in a similar way. So the first step that is required is you need to create a special general ledger journal with a manual number sequence that is required for importing the different statements. Then step 2 and step 3 just summarize what I showed you before in the system, and they basically talk about the setup of the electronic reporting model and the model mapping. Also here on the next slide, I explained you and demonstrated you the model mappings that are needed. So we can quickly go over that and stop then here at step number 4 when it comes to the configuration. When it comes to this configuration, you have to be familiar with the bank statement file format that is applicable in your country. So in my country, we have probably different separators and things that you have to look out for. But you need to know that so that you can apply the different formulas and equations that allow you to split up and identify the different transactions in the bank statement file. Okay, and then the most important thing are the equations that I listed here for you. These are just examples that should give you an idea how you can get started with them. Okay, and the last thing was this SharePoint integration that I showed you. And then we ended up with the settlement. And here in step 6, I shared you a GitHub project from my friend Yevgen, who helped me creating this custom code that does this automatic identification and settlement of the invoice documents. So please, if you have the chance, take a look at this code, adjust it, tweak it, and make it even better for your application. Okay, so this was the first part of my presentation that I wanted to share. Let us jump now to the second part where I want to demonstrate you how you can upload a WBS, so a work breakdown structure in Dynamics 365. And once again, I will start in a similar manner. So we will first focus on what is the problem. Then we will have a look at how we can fix this. And then I will give you a short demo and some hints and notes that give you an idea how you can realize that. Okay, so first of all, what is the problem? Well, the problem is many customers that work on projects, they have their own project management and accounting software. So very often they give you an extract, a copy in the form of an Excel text XML file and tell you, okay, here is our structure. Please follow this structure, create your invoices, your transactions, and all what you record in your system in line with our structure. So what we need to do is basically take this custom structure and import it into Dynamics. And well, that's easier said than done. But what we can do is we can, of course, get a help from electronic reporting. And what I will show you in the following is how we can leverage the Power Platform for that purpose. So what I will do is I will prepare work breakdown structure, a template in Excel that comes from the customer. Then I will open a Power App that is doing the upload for me on SharePoint. And then from SharePoint, we directly import this file into our work breakdown structure. So now let us also move here to my demo system, where I can show you how this is going to work. Okay, so I'm now logged in the USSI Microsoft demo company, which probably has the best project setup and configuration that we can use for demonstrating this process. So what I want to show you first is how this import process works. And for that reason, I prepared another electronic import model that we will go through first. So let me go to my report configurations, and here I have a WBS import that is also consisting of a model mapping with the abbreviation and then an XLS file, so the Excel file that I'm going to import. So the configuration is very similar to what I showed you before for the bank statement import. There are some slight differences. Let me quickly highlight them. So if we go here into the model, you can see a main record list with the hierarchy, task name, and so on. And then we have a sub list with other fields that I want to import. And the reason for this split up of a main and sub list is basically the structure of the work breakdown structure that we have. So let me show you what I mean by saying that. If I go and open a project, so let me open one of my projects, and then let me search for one of them that I recently configured. So this one here, with the number 1532, I called it Luke. And in this work breakdown structure, you can see a first form that I show you now here. So that's the main form that has the task name included, the category, effort in hours, and so on. But behind that form is a details form. And this details form is needed to import additional transactions such as expenses, some kind of item transactions, fee transactions, and any additional hour transactions. And to import data from Excel into the main and this subform here, I decided to configure my electronic report in a way that we have two sections, two record lists, so to say, that you see here in the screen. So that's the first part, that's the easy part. Then we have again the model mapping. And in the model mapping designer, you can see on top my model, and on the right hand side, if I move that a bit, you can see two data entities or tables that are basically the destination. So this is the tables or the entity into which I want to import the data. The first one is called project WBS draft entity, and it has a number of fields. So it has an activity, activity status, category, and so on. And then we have the PSA activity estimate table, which is necessary for holding the sub elements, so the detailed elements. And because we do not only want to import our transactions, but also item transactions, activities, resource information, and so on, you can see that I have a couple of additional enums and tables specified, which I will mention in my PowerPoint later on and how you use them. But the principle is again the same. So you open the different elements that you have, for example, here the task name. Then on the right-hand side, you try to find the same field in the data entity and bind these elements. Once that is finished, your model and configuration is ready to go, and we can import the data. And the import works basically the same. So if I click here on this configuration component, I can click here run, and then what I have to enter here is the project ID. So if we are back here, then let us quickly search for the project ID. That's this number, 1532. That's the element that I have to enter here. And then of course I have to select my template. And the template that I'm going to use is this one here, which we will have a look at in a second once it's imported. And then I hit OK. Okay, so that's it for the import process. Now let us have a look at what happened actually and what is the result. So for that purpose, I navigate again into my project workspace, and now I open the work breakdown structure. And if I expand the different levels, you can see the different elements that have been imported. So I have here task A, B, C, and so on, with subnodes, with the categories, with the time, and with the role IDs. So everything that was specified in my Excel template was imported here. But not only that, if I click on the Details tab, I can see that I have not only hours, but also expense and item transactions imported. And this is something that you can realize only with the help of electronic reporting. So you cannot do this by using the standard data entities, which can only import you data into this main screen. But when it comes to importing other transactions, then you're basically dependent on electronic reporting. Okay, so what we can do then, once you're happy with this import, is we can publish that and then start recording transactions for our project. Okay, but before doing that, let us have a look at another example, because what I showed you here is again relying on the electronic reporting workspace. It's a manual import, and I want to make that smarter. And the way how to make that smarter is by leveraging the Power Platform. So what I did here is I prepared two projects. So the first one is called Vader, the other one does. So these are projects that have no work breakdown structure. So here everything is basically blank. And what I want to do is I want to upload my import file through a Power App that I embedded here. So let's start this app. And then what you can see here is a selection button. And this one allows me to grab a different template and then select the upload button. So what this does is basically the upload button takes the file and triggers a Microsoft Flow. Flow then puts this import template on a SharePoint drive. And then from this SharePoint drive, electronic reporting is taking the information and then putting the information into our work breakdown structure. So let us quickly jump to my SharePoint and decide where I have imported this. So here's my WS import. And you can see that it has a similar structure if we compare it with the previous demo, the bank statement import. So new files will be placed here. This is empty because the records are already processed. And once they are processed, they are put it here into this completed import folder. So in my case, the things should already be imported. So let us double check that by opening the project and then the work breakdown structure and expanding the different levels. So also here you can see that we have here an import of the transactional data together with some expense, hour, and item transactions here in the details form. And the important thing here is that this does not work for a single project only, but for multiple projects. So if we look at the STARS project and check the work breakdown structure here, you can see that we imported multiple work breakdown structures through a single import process. So also this is something that is not possible if you work with the standard data entities. Okay, so that was it for the second demo. Now let's go back to my PowerPoint, where I want to explain you a bit more how this configuration is made and what you have to look out for. Okay, so after this short demonstration, let's go to the PowerPoint and have a look at what you need to look out for if you want to replicate this import. So first of all, I already showed you the main and sub record lists that help us importing the WBS into Dynamics. So here I listed you again the main and sub record lists and the different fields that I used for importing the data. The next slide shows you the template that I used. So also the Excel template makes use of these main and sub-project elements that import this data into Dynamics. And then again, we have a similar model mapping that we have to configure. I listed you here all the different data sources that you can go through. I will not go through them in detail, but just give you a reference so that you can get started with the different elements and know what to look out for if you are going to try to replicate this thing. So let's go through the slides and then focus on the important binding elements. And the binding here is done in the same way that has been done in the bank statement file. But now the key difference between this import and the bank statement import is this SharePoint integration with the Power App. And what I used for that purpose is basically something that was created by Shane Young. He shared on his YouTube channel how you can upload files from any kind of library to a SharePoint document library that will then be grabbed by the electronic report and then be processed through electronic reporting. So please have a look at these two YouTube videos. They give you a really good insight of what's going on and how you can realize that. Okay, so this concludes the second part. Let us now jump to the last part where I want to talk a bit about project work lists and how to attach these work lists to our project invoice. So once again, I prepared a couple of slides that explain you what is the problem. So what problem do we have? And here on this slide, you can see on the left-hand side, the work breakdown structure that we just imported. And on the right-hand side, I listed you a project invoice document, which has a different structure. So on the left-hand side, you can see the work breakdown structure that follows different, how to say, structuring. It has different IDs, it has different activity numbers. And on the right-hand side, we have an invoice that summarizes transactions, for example, by hours, by categories, just by different elements. And this is so confusing for many customers. And what they are often asking for is, hey, give us a list that tells us what you were working on and what is included in this invoice. And how you can realize that is explained in this graphical overview here. So I have here an invoice document on top, which is an Excel document, which is used for configuring the invoice. And right below, I have a work item list, which is basically a copy of the invoice and can also be set up in the print management. And once we create an invoice document, so when we say print the invoice, then you get both documents out of that. And you can send this directly to the customer either by email or you can send them by fax or whatever you have in one go. So also here, let us go to my system where I show you how this is going to work before we jump into the details, what you need to configure for this process to work. Okay, so now I will share my screen again. Okay, so I'm basically here again in my USSI demo company, where we recently just imported the work breakdown structure. And what I will show you in the following is based on this project here that I call Luke and the work breakdown structure that we have here. I want to show you how you can get an invoice out of the system that follows this structure and that also lists not only the task names, but also the activity numbers that you can find here in the invoice document. But not only that, because you might have a lot of customers that say, hey, I have a budget for my project. How much is left of that after you invoice me something? So what I will show you also in the following is, here with each and every work breakdown structure, we have a sales budget. So in my case, it's $25,600. And I want to show the customer how much is left after we created a couple of invoices. So let's get started with that. And first of all, we have to change the project stage so that we can record some transactions. So let me do that. And once this project stage is changed, let me record some simple transactions. So I create an hours journal and record just some couple of hours. So in this hours journal, I say, okay, I worked on task A as a project manager. That's my name. My role is I am the project manager, and I enter here a text, blah, blah. I worked on that 5 hours. The hours are billable. And so that I do not mess around with the sales tax, I want to exclude any kind of tax from that. So these 5 hours will charge the customer basically $1,000. So the sales price is 200 times 5 hours gives $1,000. And then let's record a second transaction, maybe for some other application development. Let's say this is done by a different employee. That's a tester. I can say testing description. And then let's say this tester was working 2 hours. They are also billable. And once again, I want to make sure that we do not have any text configured. So I can save that and post this journal. And then to make it a bit more realistic, let us also record an expense transaction. So for example, there were some travel expenses that you have to record and that you also want to invoice to your customer. So let us also record these expense transactions. So let's say here there is some travel expense. Now let's choose Wendy here as the employee, and we can say here this were some hotel costs, let's say for $80, and we charge the customer $92. Once again, I want to make sure that we do not have taxes here, able to post also this transaction. And once this is posted, we should then be able to create our project invoice. And that's done as usual by making an invoice proposal. In this invoice proposal, I just select the 2 hours and the expense transactions that I have and then hit OK. And what will happen is you will get a preview of the project invoice that will be generated. If you scroll down, you can see that we will charge the customer almost $1,500. And then further down in the transaction details, you can see the hours and expense transactions that are included in this invoice. Okay, since we are fine with that, let's post that and directly print the invoice. So I say here, okay. And what will happen now is there will be 2 reports generated. The first one is the normal project invoice. This one will be structured in a way that the transactions are classified by the project category. And then on top of that, we will get a second document out of that lists you first the different work items we were working on. So we should see 2 hour transactions and 1 expense transaction. And further at the bottom, we should also see the budget data. But the budget data not from a costing perspective, but from a perspective of the customer, where we show them how much sales amount is left over. And in a couple of seconds, this report should hopefully pop up here. So now they are processed. And let's open these documents, or wait until they open. In my case, these are Excel documents. But as you know, in electronic reporting, we can specify that we see PDF documents here as outputs. So this is really something flexible that you can easily configure. But let us first have a look at the invoice document. And what you can see from the invoice is that we have a grouping for the hours. that are basically for a total price of 1,400. And then further below, we see the expense transactions for $92. So that's what usually is available in standard Dynamics. But what customers are looking out is the second document that you already saw. So let's also enable the editing and zoom a bit here so that you can see that better. And what I included here in the yellow section is the work item list. So you can, on the left-hand side of the table that is listed here, you can see the activity number that might come from the customer. You can see the task name that also is specified by the customer and additional information that you entered. And further below, you can see the activities and the actual amount that is invoiced in combination with the budget that we have. So if you remember, we had a total budget of $25,600. And from this budget, 24,000 is left after we created this first invoice. So this is some good information that you can give your customer on hand just by configuring electronic reporting a bit. Okay, now that's it for the demo. Let me go back to my PowerPoint for some remarks and some tips and tricks that you have to look out for and that demonstrate you how to make this additional document work out. After this short demonstration, here are some notes that give you an idea how you can realize this invoicing process. So first of all, what I used is I was creating a copy of the standard project invoice. And in the invoice model, I added two sections. One for the activity list that I highlighted in blue color, and one for the actual budget comparison that I highlighted in red color. The fields or the tables that I used for these sections, they are listed here. So the activity list data, they all come from the project invoice tables. So there's a project invoice cost, employee, item, and so on table that holds all the information of these activities. And then I combined that and grouped that together. And the same was applied to the PSA activity estimate table that hold our budget data from the work breakdown structure. So this is a similar concept that I applied here. Here are some additional calculated fields that I needed because I want to give the customer this information. So I have the activity number, task name, category, and you can include everything that you like. Everything that is inside of Dynamics can be listed and extracted here. And of course, the same was done here for the activity estimate or the budget data. But because I record the budgets only at the activity level, I have less. And the way how this works is then, after you identified the different tables, you group them, you summarize them with a list join, and then you can filter them so that you exclude all the data that do not belong to a specific invoice. And of course, the same is done for the PSA activity estimate table. And also here we filter not only for the specific data that belong to a specific invoice, but also for performance. Because the reason why I'm doing a filter here is because the activity or budget data does not have a direct relationship with the project invoice tables that are listed above. So what is needed is here a clever filtering so that you get out the data in a decent manner. Okay, and then the last thing is the design of this additional document that you want to give to your customer. Here I just highlighted the sections in yellow and blue color. You can use different things, different design patterns, whatever you like. And then, of course, the last step, let me jump to this step, is in the print management, you have to set up a second invoice copy where you attach this second document with the activity details. So that's all basically what you need to make this work item list work for you. Okay, so that's all what I had to share. I hope you found these examples useful. I hope you can implement them, replicate them in your demo environment. If you need, I can copy and export you all of the templates, the models that are used in this demonstration. At the end, I would like to thank you very much for your attention and would like to open it for questions and feedback. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for voting for my session on dynamics.com. I hope you found it interesting and useful and can get a bit out of something from this presentation for your own environment. Once again, I would like to thank again dynamics.com and the community, and yeah, look forward to seeing the other sessions then. Thank you very much.